morning's presentation has to do with poetry, and just by sheer coincidence, I happen to have a couple of poems, or at least excerpts from two poems to share with you. When I was in the 5th grade, and I went to Catholic school, and the nuns had us memorize certain poems, and there's only one that more or less stuck with me through the years, because it had je ne sais quoi about it, whatever that means. It's, maybe some of you know this one. It's The Village Blacksmith by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Oh, well, then you'll get a kick out of the second poem that I have that's going to be kind of like that. So here's 3 stanzas from The Village Blacksmith. Under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The smith, a mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and the muscles of his brawny arms are strong as iron bands. His hair is crisp and black and long, his face is like the tan. His brow is wet with honest sweat, he earns whatever he can. He looks the whole world in the face, for he owes not any man. I'm getting an image here. Last stanza. Thanks to thee, my worthy friend, for the lesson thou hast taught. Thus at the flaming forge of life, our fortunes must be wrought. Thus on the sounding anvil shaped each burning deed and thought. That's Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, The Village Blacksmith. Since it does take a village, I'm going to read 3 stanzas from a more recent poem by Frank Jacobs, who was a writer for Mad Magazine. It's called The Village Hippie. Under his pad, on 10th and B, the village hippie stands. A turned-on acid head is he, with pale and shaking hands. And the flower jacket that he wears hangs down in tattered strands. His hair is long and blonde and curled. He sets it when he can. His face is caked with unwashed grime that looks just like a tan. And when he's near, you sort of wish he'd use right guard or ban. And here's the last stanza. The years fly by, and now let's see the hippie we once knew. His hair turned white, his teeth are gone, his mind is rotted through. Whoever thought he'd live to reach the age of 32?
Robert Sanford actually needs no introduction for most of us, but if you have just recently started coming to HGP, or this is your first time, I will tell you that he is one of the earliest members of this group, has served as HGP historian, member of our board, MC, and presenter of programs on travel, photography, and poetry. This is, in fact, as mentioned for the 3rd time, his 14th presentation on poetry and its power. In one of his previous careers, Robert taught high school English, where he learned not only to unpack the richness of sounds and words, but how to lead others to do the same. Please enjoy that journey through his chosen poems today.
Most speakers who stand up here say something and then answer questions. Not me. I'm going to say some things and then ask questions. You get to answer them. I've timed my comments, which come to about 12 minutes. The other 48 minutes are up to you. Enough said? Just stay on point. How many are new to these poetry programs? Okay. Good morning, Al. I set this chair out here, but I'm going to spend a few minutes sharing what I think are the chief differences between poetry and prose. Should be familiar to you by now, but I will add that a character in Moliere's play, so mid-18th century France, the bourgeois gentleman is pleased to discover that he'd been speaking prose his whole life. So, talk here about the difference between a pile of words and a poem. Anybody remember one of these 3? Figurative language. I'm going to talk about photography and poetry. Serious photographers go out into the world with a camera and bring back images. And non-serious photographers do the same. Not to be snooty about it, but there's often a difference in the images. The serious photographer's images are usually much better, partly because they have a different purpose, and there's some other factors. They have clearer eyes in a way, so better equipment. But when I was teaching photography work, or helping to teach photography workshops, one of the first questions we asked the class was, what kind of typewriter did Ernest Hemingway use? And people, oh, gee, I don't know, Smith, Corona, Remington. And the answer, of course, is, it doesn't matter. And the camera doesn't matter either. That's separate. Poets go out into the world and have an experience and bring back poems. People go out into the world, have experiences, but rarely bring back poems. But when you read the poems, you get to see the world the poets saw through the poems they brought back, which expands your vision as well. And I've just used one of the principal tools and gadgets of poetry, which is figurative language, which is to say A is like B or A is B. Poetry, which many people don't know a lot about, is like photography, which a lot of people know about and do themselves. So in using figurative language, it's a shortcut to tell you that something you may not know much about is very like something you already know about. Robert Frost, and this is a hint, once said, poetry is the only acceptable way to say one thing and mean another. Not bad. And here's an example. Anthropologist talking about a, I think, Peruvian psychotropic drug called iwatmapno. What makes iwatmapno fascinating? It's not its pharmacological potential, but the psychotropic effect. It's rather like, it's the figurative language coming, there's the clue word, like. It's rather like being shot out of a barrel of a cannon lined with Baroque paintings and landing on a sea of electricity. Well, how's that? That's pretty good figurative language. Strong visuals burn in your brain like, yeah, here's another one, like the bright hot spite of a flashbulb. Burns into your retina. Next, anybody remember a next difference? Sounds of the words. Many poems use the sounds of the words to contribute to the experience of the poem. This occurs in 3 different ways. Ah, you got the first one. Next one? Alliteration and rhythm. Very good. Have you been studying your notes?
I reviewed my notes.
Oh, man. So I'll talk about rhyme first. Matching the ends of the line sounds. And if you have a little poem, and of course all songs are poems, there's only a couple of songs that don't rhyme. By the way, Moonlight in Vermont is one of them. Moon, June, croon, spoon, and swoon. You not only pick up on the rhymes, so you can pretty much tell what that's about. There's lots of forms of rhymes, and I'm not going to get too far into that, but a couplet, which is common, is where the first 2 lines rhyme with each other, and the next 2 lines rhyme with each other, and the next 2 rhyme with each other. My favorite poem, Terence, This Is Stupid Stuff, is rhymed couplets. And for many people, the critical component of poetry is rhyme, but many of the best poems don't rhyme at all. Alliteration is matching not the end sounds of words, but the beginning sounds of words. Here's one from Paul Revere's Ride, echoing Longfellow. Struck out by a steed that flies fearless and fleet. It's pretty good, probably better alliteration than a poem, but that's all a separate issue. And from my favorite poem again, and malt does more than Milton can to justify God's ways to man. So, and those M sounds, the alliterative sounds, all hit on stressed syllables too. So it's an extra little, okay? And rhythm. And it's the rhythm of the stressed and unstressed syllables. It's also called meter, and it's, of all these factors, it's kind of the most academic, which means snooty and possibly irrelevant. I mean, if I say that my favorite poem is iambic tetrameter, what difference does that make? You know, just something to think about. The names of the metrical feet, there's iambs and dactyls and anapests. How's that? And all that can be like a swamp that's easily entered and difficult to escape from. And it's pretty peripheral unless you're a lit major. Although I will talk for a second about blank verse versus free verse. Blank verse is rhythmical and doesn't rhyme, and free verse is just words. Prose. Very good, Val. In Shakespeare, the kings and the dukes and the nobles spoke blank verse. And the peasants just spoke. We got a mic for Al over here, please. I was just going to put a mic on your chair here, Al.
There are some places in Shakespeare where non-nobility does speak in the iambic pentameter, and it's whenever it's formal speech in Shakespeare that is in the iambic pentameter, and the informal speech is not. So when the lowly people are doing formal things, they sometimes switch. And there's another spin on that too. There's no scenery on a Shakespeare stage. And the first two people walk out and say, well, damn, it's dark here in the woods. So now you know you're in a forest and it's nighttime. How do you know it's the end of a scene? More than just they walk off. It's a couplet. The last two lines in a scene normally rhyme with each other. Just another little signal. Okay. So those are the sounds of the words. We've got figurative language. And the third difference, I think, is the most careful word usage. Here's my favorite example. You've heard it before. It's a song by K.T. Oslin, very interesting poet, songwriter. Woman's looking out of a window shortly after the loss of a relationship. Sitting by the window, looking through the pane. I can't see the rainbow for the rain. So here's the question. How do you spell pain? Yeah. So what kind of typewriter does Hemingway use? It doesn't matter how you spell pain because each of the options keep reinforcing each other and intensify that. And it's very subtle, but it's right there in the line. Okay? And I'm going to refer to the great September question. Students always ask this in September, and I would never answer it for them. They had to figure it out for themselves, as most of you have already done. And we had a transfer student came in from Marysville one January, sitting in junior English, American Lit, and after about the third day, he put his hand in the air and said, "Why don't poets just come out and say what they mean?" And everybody broke out laughing. And I said, no, it's okay, it's okay. The reason they're laughing is they all asked this question in September. But I'm not going to answer it, you'll figure it out. And he did. Okay? If you know the answer, most of you do. Don't spoil it for those who might not, because then they don't get to discover it. And discovery's more vibrant experience than just learning or hearing.
Okay, so those are the differences. And I've got 5 little preliminary tools here to help pry open a poem and get to the good parts. Anybody remember what these are? Vocabulary, if you don't understand what all the words mean, be flailing around. And speakers. Who's talking? And, of course, to whom? But I'm going to give you one of my favorite little poems and have you just look at speakers, okay? It's 2 slides. You couldn't get it all on one side. No big deal. And the second slide will give you enough information to answer the question. What do you see now? Globes of red, yellow, purple. Just a moment. And now, my father and mother and sisters. Yes. And now, knights at arms, beautiful women, kind faces. Try this. Oh, missed there. A field of grain, a city. Very good. And now, a young woman with angels bending over her. A heavier lens. And now, many women with bright eyes and open lips. Try this. Just a goblet on a table. Oh, I see. Little pun there. Try this lens. Just an open space. I see nothing in particular. Well, now. I'm sorry. Well, now. Pine trees, a lake, a summer sky. That's better. And now, a book. Read a page for me. I can't. My eyes are carried beyond the page. Try this lens. Depths of air. Excellent. And now, light, just light, making everything below it a toy world. Very well. We'll make the glasses accordingly. Okay, so anybody have thoughts about speaker? What do we have here? Yeah, we got an optometrist and a patient. Okay? And it's pretty confusing at first, but it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And here's an interesting little twist. If there's 2 speakers, they're each other's audience. And you're just overhearing the poem, whereas many poets just speak directly to the reader. Here the 2 speakers are speaking to each other. This is from Spoon River Anthology, and you've seen several Spoon River Anthology poems from me. And this is called Dippold the Optician. But I left the title off so you could develop some more yeah, exactly. Little discovery. Okay? So we got speakers and audience. And the setting. Sometimes it's just a universal setting and it doesn't matter. What was the setting for Dippold the Optician? Why do you think it's the office? Yeah, and he had all the different lenses. Yeah. And the last one's structure. And what I mean by structure is not chorus and verses or stanzas or anything, but sometimes poets will go out and have an experience and just write down the poem, and that's the experience. That's all they're sharing. That's one structure. But if they have an experience and come back and write down the poem and then add a little comment at the end about why they felt that way or what it made them think of or some kind of addition to the experience, their reaction to the experience, that's what I see as the other structure. Okay? Any questions about any of these? Okay. So here's the first poem. I told you that was a clue. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening.
Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Okay? So let's go back to the 5 tools. The first is vocabulary. Any problems with any of the vocabulary here? Any words you don't know? I wouldn't think so. Yeah, audience. Well, the horse, yeah. But I think it's the reader. It's the horse is a character in, but not being talked to. In fact, the sounds are going the other way, from the horse to the driver, the carriage or whatever he's in, a sleigh. Speaker. What do we know about this person?
He's got miles to go.
He's got miles to go. What else? I'm sorry? Rural, yes, thank you. He's in the woods. He lives near a village. The village is not very far away, but a little ways away.
Plain spoken.
Plain spoken. John? Very good, John. That's very subtle. Good for you. Yeah. I got married once on December 21st. It was the shortest day, but the longest night.
Didn't help.
It didn't work out. Okay. Setting. Everybody clear about the setting? And is there a, this is an experience, is there a comment on the experience?
I just want to know why you stopped.
Because the woods are lovely, dark, and deep.
Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting spin on this that I'll share. The word, he will not see me stopping here. When I was going over this, before I pulled the poem down, because I had it in my head, I thought, I didn't use the word see. I used the word mind. He will not mind me stopping here. And that's a different level of intensity with the relationship with the wood's owner than see. If he will not see me means he can get away with it. And he will not mind, it's just, it's fine.
Well, he might mind if he saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, if it says see, I think it's more that he would mind. So the driver of the sleigh here is getting away with a little something.
So would you call the 2 last lines a couplet or not?
Well, they rhyme. And the rhythm's exactly the same. Okay. So let me ask you a couple of questions. In the sounds of the words we talked about rhyme, there's also the notion of a rhyme scheme. You use the letter A for the sound at the end of the first line and B for the first change, and except if there's no rhyme to that line, it gets an X. But you don't have any of that today. What's the rhyme scheme of the first stanza? A, A, B, A. And the second stanza? B, B, C, B. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm sorry, I was unclear. Yeah, you keep them pretty much throughout. And C? Yeah, C, C, D, C. And the fourth stanza? Yeah, otherwise he's trapped. He's got to go through the whole alphabet. And that's an elegant way to solve the little kind of structural
gadget he's got built up till then. Okay? So, in terms of figurative language, I don't see much except the difference in the last two lines, which Val has already pointed out are the same. Period. Anne?
Well, I wasn't commenting on that. I wanted to know, does the poet think of the rhyme scheme when he writes it, or does it just come, from, I don't know, the sky?
Right. My guess is that he gets the idea for the poem. He starts throwing words on the page, and then he tries to intensify the experience for the reader, concentrate it, and one of the ways you do that is with the sounds of the words. One of the ways you do that is with the rhyme scheme. So there's a pattern there. The only two poems I've ever written, and Robert Heinlein's character Lazarus Long says, people who read their own poems in public may have other disgusting habits. So you're safe. Patty?
The second verse has no punctuation, so you just read it.
Yeah, it's just a sentence.
You don't stop at the end of a line.
Yep. It's just a sentence. And it goes straight through. And the third stanza is two sentences. Okay? So, line 15, line 16, there's a difference other than punctuation? I think there is, and I want to suggest that line 15 is local and technical. It's got to get home. It's got chores to do. But the repeat of that line suggests to me a longer journey and a different kind of sleep.
Is that figurative?
Yeah. So the miles and sleep in line 16, different from the miles and sleep in line 15. Okay? So, by the way, one of the descriptions of sleep, especially in Shakespeare, is death's second self. So figuratively and philosophically, it's halfway. Because you're not moving, you're not talking, you're lying down. Okay? So I got a different question for you. There's a focus in this poem, I think, and it's not the woods. What's the focus? Anybody have an idea? I think it's the tension and the pull between the horse and the guy. The guy's just standing there watching the woods, and the horse is saying, come on, let's go. And the horse is acting kind of like a Greek chorus. You know, in Greek plays, one of the tricks is, if it's an hour and 47 minutes on stage, it's an hour and 47 minutes in the story they're telling. It's one of the unities that Aristotle figured, unity of time and place. Everything takes place there, nothing takes place off stage. Everything's happening in the real minute, in the real time. Like High Noon. The movie High Noon takes place in real time. The time on the clocks is the same as the time on your watch, same amount of time. By the way, every time they show a clock in High Noon, it's a little bigger on the screen. The camera's a little closer and a little closer and a little closer. But that's unity of time. Almost no movies are like that. Almost no movies are unity of place. But High Noon's unity of time. Anyway, so in Greek plays, there's the king and the queen and the courtiers and all that. Then off to the side, there's a group of about 6 or 8, and they're the chorus. And they speak for the gods. They speak for common sense. They say things like, don't you remember the prophecy? And stuff like that. And they're the sending up warning flags, which the people on stage mostly dismiss. So I think the little horse here acts like a Greek chorus saying, "Psst, come on, time to go, time to go." Okay? John?
What makes you think he was in a sleigh?
Well, it could be a wagon, but it's snowing.
Well, I've
It's
been
all.
thinking about this, and I didn't picture a sleigh when I first went through
Okay.
it, and I'm trying to figure out why. And I'm thinking of, why is he stopping to watch the snow? I think because it might be unusual, there's snow right then.
Which
And
would
so-
put him in a wagon, not a
That's
sleigh.
right. Why else would you stop to watch the snow? If it had been snowing for
Well,
months, and that's when you use a sleigh. So.
That's a great point, John. Everybody tracking that? Oh, go ahead, Joyce.
Well,
Okay.
As far as why he would stop to watch the snow, it's that moment has just captured him. And I think he wants to capture us in the same way with his snippet of it.
It's just that little transcendent gasp of you're walking by something you've seen 50 times, and all of a sudden it's just gets you. Joyce?
Some other things that I see going on in this poem is that there's a kind of rockingness to the rhythm. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though.
Yeah, that's-
He will not see me step, blah, blah, blah. So you've got that movement going on, and then you also have it going from, and you're gonna get to a point where it's completely stopped. But also you have it going from, it's sort of, you don't have a sense of how dark it is in the first stanza, but it starts to get darker and colder and woods and frozen lake, and so it's getting colder and darker, but then you get the line, the only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. You're slowing down and you're starting to feel that I need to slow down, which you're going to get in the last stanza. Miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. A lot of the rhythm of this poem has to do with what the sense you get from it.
And that's mostly iambic, so da-da, da-da, da-da. Patty?
Well, I think there's two things about the second verse. One is that they're talking about between the woods and the frozen lake. So it is wintertime for a lake.
Because the lake's frozen.
Frozen. And it's pretty unusual for someone to be out at night in bad weather. So I think that's another issue. This is a unique situation for the man, that he is seeing something he doesn't normally see.
Okay, yeah, if he was home, he'd be chopping kindling and making a fire, making dinner, but he's not. Connect.
While we are scientifically dissecting what's a poem
Yes.
or a prose, what is it that creates aha? The writer has had an experience unknown to you, but he takes that and conveys to you, and as a human being,
Yeah.
can you tell me one item of that list which does that? Am I clear in my question? I will repeat.
Mostly. No, I think you made a great point. The speaker had a transcendent moment, which is what her comment was, and he's just captured by it. And as he comes down into it slowly, quieter, do, then the horse goes, hey. Oh, I'm sorry. Val.
I'm bothered by the darkest evening of the year. I'm just too literal, and there is no such thing as the darkest evening of the year. The longest there is. But why does he choose to say darkest? Because he wants the poem to be dark? I mean...
He may have found a transcendent moment of beauty inside some darkness.
I disagree a bit about the timing. It is the apparently longest evening of the year. This could be, I've always thought of this as 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. This, hello?
Yeah.
I've always thought of this poem, all of this taking place at 4 or 5 in the evening. He's on his way home.
Yep.
Many people are home.
Yep.
In the village because it's cold and dark already, and the horse is ready to go home for dinner.
Yeah, and maybe he's coming from the village to his farm.
That's always been my
Yeah.
assumption, and it's a transcendent moment.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
It's dark, but the snow is,
Yeah.
and the snow in the dark is different than the snow in the daylight.
Yeah. It's wonderful, isn't it? Here we are, spent 20 minutes talking about 16 lines of poetry.
Hi, Dad. So I always thought, because of the promises line, that it wasn't like that line 16's not about death, it's about obligation.
Okay?
He's got promises. To whom?
Right.
Like, what's the weight of that? So I think line 15 is technical. Like, I have a long way to go to get home, and I wish I was home right now. But line 16 is like, I have obligations.
Yeah, duties.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read it again and then go to a funny little poem. Everybody know the author of this? Robert Frost. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Okay? After English class, I used to like stopping by woods on a snowy evening. I liked the coming darkness, the jingle of harness bells, breaking and adding to the stillness, the gentle drift of snow. But today the teacher told us what everything stood for: the woods, the horse, the miles to go, the sleep. They all have hidden meanings. It's grown so complicated now that next time I drive by, I don't think I'll bother to stop. Okay? Here's the next one. If we have time. Yeah. Desert places. Snow falling and night falling fast. Oh, fast in a field I looked into going past, and the ground almost covered smooth in snow, but a few weeds and stubble showing last. The woods around it have it. It is theirs. All animals are smothered in their lairs. I am too absent-spirited to count. The loneliness includes me unawares. And lonely as it is, that loneliness will be more lonely ere it will be less. A blanker whiteness of benighted snow with no expression, nothing to express. They cannot scare me with their empty spaces between stars, on stars where no human race is. I have it in me so much nearer home to scare myself with my own desert places. Whoa! That's pretty good. So, vocabulary, any problems there? Yes, the poet audience is you, I think, because there's nothing else in the poem to talk to. It's all going on inside his head or her head. Yeah. Setting. setting. Where is this taking place? There's woods. You know, I can make this, do a little laser tag.
The desert is all internal.
Yeah, it's going on inside his head. Everything's internal. Nothing's being spoken. Well, there's a field and woods around it, but that's about all the setting. Pretty, I mean, reasonably universal. Okay, Patty thinks it's at night. Could be driving. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry? Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's out somewhere, that's all we know. Yep. You better hurry. Okay. Structure. Anything about experience and comment? Or is it just an experience?
I do see the last stanza as a comment.
Yeah, I think that's true. So it's got 3 stanzas of experience and 1 stanza of a reaction to that experience. That even as bleak as the first 3 stanzas are, they don't come close to his sense of bleakness in his own self.
No, but there's sure a strong hint of it that I am too absent-spirited to count.
Yeah. Yeah. Loneliness includes me unaware. It's a tough line. Okay. Yeah. The wife of the psychiatrist speaks again. Yes, ma'am.
It is bleak, but there's also a hopefulness of persistence in it, in that as blankness and as bleak as he sees out in the world, he has that within himself, and yet he's still going. They can't scare him.
Yeah, they can't scare him. With the universe can't scare him. It's the emptiness inside his own head that's scary. Okay? Jerry. Wait a minute. There you go.
While it might be that the emptiness inside his own head is scary, he can handle it because he's aware of it. And it says, I am too absent-minded to count the loneliness includes me unawares. Well, but he's not unawares if he can write like this.
Yeah.
So he's on top of his game even though he might be down.
So he's describing, not moaning or wailing.
Yes.
Is that your sense?
Yeah.
This is a description rather than a symptom.
Yeah, or a call for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, poet? It's Robert Frost. And it's almost the same setting as Stopping by Woods. But there's some interesting differences. And this word, it's very powerful. They're not sleeping. They're not hiding from the cold of the winter, curled up in a ball with their little babies and families in a nest of leaves. They're smothered. Boy, that's a tough verb. That's really tough. And it's one of the ones that lends to the whole sense of, okay? Okay, read this one again. I got another one for you I think you'll really like. Not that you haven't liked these. Desert Places by Robert Frost. Snow falling and night falling fast. Oh, fast in a field I looked into going past. Excuse me. Have some choice water here. The woods around it have it. It is theirs. All animals are smothered in their lairs. I am too absent-spirited to count. The loneliness includes me unawares. And lonely as it is, that loneliness will be more lonely ere it will be less, of blanker whiteness
of benighted snow with no expression, nothing to express. They cannot scare me with their empty spaces between stars, on stars where no human race is. I have it in me so much nearer home to scare myself with my own desert places. Whew, pretty good, huh? Okay. So this is one of my favorite photographs. I took it in a church in the south of France. I walked down the steps, turned around, looked. I'm always turning around. I mean, I go to photography workshops. Everybody's taking this picture. I'm usually looking for a picture here. And when I went to the Taj Mahal, you can bet I did not stand in the footsteps there, the marble footsteps where everybody stands to take that picture. So here's another looking backwards picture. And I think it's a picture of time. Everybody tracking that? This is a 12th century church. So for 900 years, people have been going up and down those stairs, and that's a picture of that time. Jerry?
I'm not sure if everybody gets to the top or if everybody's at the top and doesn't get to the bottom.
I think they replaced the bottom step. Yeah. Maybe they had to repair it.
Or they get down the steps, they're spreading out to each side of the church.
There's a famous restaurant in L.A. called The Pantry. It's been there continuously for something like 60 years. And the concrete is worn out right before the cashier. You can see that. That reminded me of that.
Okay, good. So here's the poem. Stone steps. Put stone steps anywhere and time sets in. Builders make steps climb, time takes them down. Look at Rome's warped stones. Every man, woman, child going up to pray scuffs the stone one prayer thinner. Before it's gone, workmen come by and lay a new one, but only a stopgap. Begin again anywhere, and you only begin again. The first foot on the block is as legal as the last one. What's done is not done instantly, but it is done. There gets to be less and less to climb by, to prayer or to anything. If workmen do not get there in time, you find a ramp instead of a stair. If no one gets there, you find a mound where the ramp was and nothing on top. Why are stones thought to be solids? Air is as long. It's only faster than they are, not less firm. Air, moreover, can repair itself. What stone can? And you can climb higher on air than on stone. If you are out for altitude, build accordingly, if you dare. Isn't that nice? Okay, so we've got the 5 tools: vocabulary, audience, speaker, setting, and structure. Any vocabulary issues here? Audience, is this directed to anybody inside the poem? No. So the reader's the audience. So the speaker's the poet, the person having this experience, this observation. Setting. Is this... I think this is a little too philosophical to take place in a specific location. This is a rumination after lots of observations. In Terence, this is stupid stuff. It takes place in a pub after a rugby or a football match. This is much more ephemeral. Kanak.
It's the poet's experience.
I'm sorry?
It's the poet's experience that he translates into a form.
Yes.
It's a moving process, constantly moving with the time and the space. He grabs and catches that. That makes an impact in his mind. And his mind, depending upon the language which is historical, it is fixed. He chooses the words, arranges, and gives it back to you.
Yeah.
He shares it. So, the first one in my list would be the impact. The experience that made the impact and stimulated him to come out and express in words. That is missing in your 4 or 5 classes. Vocabulary and audience and all those things. Take, say, next place. If I improve on that list, I would say impact. How would you define that? How would you put in that list? Would you accept that?
Well, I guess what I'll say to that is that the 5 tools are ways to pop open the poem and get inside it, so the full richness of it can emerge and it can be accessible and not hidden. I mean, one of the things poetry is concentrated. You know, it's like those little paper pellets you put in water and they slowly emerge and it's a lion or a dragon. Well, you're the water. Everybody tracking that? And one of the ways you get to be the water is you learn to crack this thing open and figure it out. And after that happens, then you have a much better chance of having the impact that Kanak's talking about, I think.
I would like to add one more thing, self-experience. I started learning English at the age of 14. Didn't know a word about, only thing I knew was the ABC. And in the second year, the teacher started talking about the English literature. In poetry, it was Wordsworth's Daffodils. In his inward eye, 1,000, something like that. Didn't make any difference to me. Didn't know what's daffodil, how it looks, nothing whatsoever. Comes 1952, I come to this country. For the first time, I see daffodils. Now that daffodil. Impact came now. The words were chosen in a different language, in a different atmosphere, for an unknown person who was an Englishman. I come from India, in the United States, and the first time I see daffodils coming up overnight, it was a magical thing. It took me all that, cross those cultural barriers, and aha. So Wordsworth's aha,
right,
a century ago, made a bulb light in my mind in 1952.
It's part of the power, I think. That's one of the reasons we're doing so many of these programs over the years. Started in November of 2007. Did the first poetry program. Patty. Yeah.
Well, for me, it's that nothing lasts. If you read line 7, he's saying, or 6 and 7, workmen come by and lay a new one, but only a stopgap. And then you go down to line 10, what's done is done instantly, but it is not done instantly, but it's done. So that all things are going to fade away eventually. Okay. And eventually there is nothing but air.
Nice catch. Okay. So there's a trick hidden in this poem, by the way. Why don't you work out the rhyme scheme? Everybody got it now, the rhyme scheme? Yeah, a little soft focus rhyme scheme maybe. It's A, B, 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 B. Which is the progression of the ideas in the poem. It reinforces the ideas that are in the words of the poem. Go from stone to air. Hang on a second.
Am I interrupting? Those are many words that are spelled similarly, but they're not pronounced the same.
Yeah.
In the second half, the words,
They're
in the
closer.
B,
They're closer.
they do rhyme, but in the first half,
Yeah.
they don't really rhyme.
Well, that's why I suggested a soft focus.
Is that,
You
that's
get
what you mean?
out of focus just a little and... Well, my dear, I'd love to know more about that. She said,
Soft focus allows you to get away with a lot.
yeah, soft focus, you get away with more. Anyway, this is John Ciardi, by the way, and I think it's just an interesting poem, and just, there's the little rhyme scheme piece is just a little frosting. The poem is the cake, but that's pretty nice frosting, I think. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'm thinking about something else.
Oh,
Never mind, I'm thinking about something else. I like the last line, build accordingly. That seems very hopeful and clever and wise.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, I don't know, it doesn't, it seems all of a sudden he's saying, there's a future here, or build accordingly, and build,
Well,
I have high hopes.
I always thought he was leading to that. And the other idea I had was that it was not just one experience he's had here, but many experiences and a lot of thought, and then his aha. Val?
My feelings are, I don't agree with the poet that the wearing down of the steps is a removal. To me, it's an addition. As you see the steps worn down, it makes the stairway more meaningful, more significant for all those people who have tread it.
It's kind of
Trotted.
barometer of human experience, you mean?
Write that poem.
I want to know how long he'd been married when he wrote this. Because I really, I mean, you could look at it in terms of a relationship. You sort of establish it, and things wear down, or things need to be built up or maintained or whatever, and if you let it go, then it's gone. And you have to keep working on it. So because you know, I've been married 21 years. And so it just, I mean, I see the literal conversation about stairs and stone and things like that, but I also see it as maintenance, as like building something, and you can't just neglect it, then you have to keep at it. And you can climb as high as you want, but you have to keep working on it.
Yeah, I heard a thing on NPR this morning, I can't remember the context, but I was reminded of the notion that the greatest enemy of romantic love is daily life. And yet, and getting to this kind of vision, you know.
I don't hear many people mentioning that. I mean, this seems to be making the point that air has advantages over stone. I mean, in some ways it's more strong, has more utility because it's there. It can be built. You can build higher on the air. It doesn't wear away. It's more flexible, and so it's seems to be making some of that point that, you know, being rigid and strong isn't everything. There's the power that comes with flexibility, etc.
Yeah, good, thanks. Joyce?
Which really reinforces Val's point that that stone has been replaced by air.
Ooh, aren't you good? Okay, well, I'm going to read this again, and I've got a couple quick ones for you, and I'm done. Stone steps. Put stone steps anywhere and time sets in. Builders make steps climb, time takes them down. Look at Rome's warped stones. Every man, woman, child going up to pray scuffs the stone one prayer thinner. Before it's gone, workmen come by and lay a new one, but only a stopgap. Begin again anywhere. You only begin again. The first foot on the block is as legal as the last one. What's done is not done instantly, but it is done. There gets to be less and less to climb by, to prayer or to anything. If workmen do not get there in time, you find a ramp instead of a stair. If no one gets there, you find a mound where the ramp was and nothing on top. Why are stones thought to be solids? Air is as long. It is only faster than they are, not less firm. Air, moreover, can repair itself. What stone can? And you can climb higher on air than on stone. If you are out for altitude, build accordingly, if you dare. Isn't that nice? Okay. I have a couple of examples of figurative language here, and nothing to do with anything else this morning, but I just wanted to share this pairing. So here's one piece of figurative language. Rachel Lindsay's poem, The Mouse That Gnawed the Oak Tree Down. The mouse that gnawed the oak tree down when that tough foe was at his feet found in the stump no angel cake, nor buttered bread, nor cheese, nor meat. The forest roof let in the sky. This light is worth the work, said he. I'll make this ancient swamp more light, and started on another tree. Okay? This is the last stanza of about a 5-stanza poem. So just the image of the light is worth the work. Okay? This is Edwin Markham's poem about the death of Lincoln. And when the steps of earthquake shook the house, wrenching the rafters from their ancient hold, he held the ridge pole up and spiked again the rafters of the home. He held his place, held the long purpose like a growing tree, held on through blame and faltered not at praise. And when he fell in a whirlwind, he went down as when a kingly cedar, green with boughs, goes down with a great shout upon the hills and leaves a lonesome place against the sky. Okay? So exactly the same image, right? The tree opening up the sky. And in the mouse, it was a good thing. And here, Lincoln's death leaves a lonesome place against the sky. I just wanted to share this with the idea that you get a lot of visual images, often in figurative language in poetry. Remember, 1/3 of your brain is geared to handle visual images. So anything you can make a picture out of, even if it's a little word picture, is really going to have an impact. So here's the same image with two different directions and thrusts. Joyce?
Can you put the Rachel Lindsay poem up there
Sure.
again? I was sort of hoping that might work with the current administration.
Well, probably better this one than this one.
When you're talking about poems that create a picture, I think of like the William Carlos Williams Red Wheelbarrow poem, and did he write the Plums poem as well? And they're just so...
I've eaten the plums in the icebox.
Forgive me, they were so sweet.
Delicious and cold.
So cold.
I think, yeah.
So it's just like, and those, there's no rhyme scheme, they're very short, and it's just like a photograph.
Yep.
So.
Bang.
Yeah.
And it's a little transcendent piece that resonated and then got shared. Okay? Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much, and we'll do this again.